Don't make.
Yeah, we're live. Look at that. We're live already.
Hey, welcome. Hello. How are you doing? Happy
Today's your day
Friday.
off. And you were like, eh.
Yeah, I did. I took the day off. I got brunch. I went and saw Ant-Man Quantumania.
So how was Ant-Man Quantum Mania?
Let's just say Phase 4 Marvel Cinematic Universe continues to disappoint.
This is Phase 5.
Whatever
It's the lead-in for Phase 5.
Okay, well, it's not leading in well.
Well, this was supposed to come out in the middle of Phase 4.
Yes. I'm assuming everything got messed up because of...
Correct.
Yeah.
And it got heavily, I think, rewritten and redone and rejiggered and you name it.
Yeah. So. It's just one of those things where you're trying to do too much and squeeze in a million things, and it just feels like there wasn't anyone in real control of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, for example, like the last great movie I truly saw was Denis Villeneuve's Dune, and like you're like, okay, this movie had a director, right? This movie had somebody at the helm who was making decisions for storytelling purposes, and you might not agree with those decisions. That's totally valid, but you have to admit that there's at least someone behind the wheel. You might not like where he's going, but there's someone behind the wheel.
Oh, I love that movie. I've seen it. I couldn't see it when it came out because I know when to see it with, and it's been on cable now. Like I've seen it like 100 times. it's always on, and I just watch it. It's surprisingly good considering how dense the material is. I'm kind of always amazed that they got it out. And then they filmed the second one. The second one comes out this Christmas, I think. So,
maybe. I know they were doing some shoots. I don't know if it's this year or next year.
No, it's this year. It's this year. But yeah, it's not. I don't know. I'm trying to think of some really good movies that I've seen. I did see something really good that I loved. What did I see that I loved? I can't think of anything. I forgot what it was. It was like something with, actually it was Andor, and that's not a movie. Because it's all practical. It looks like it's mostly practical effects. I think that's a big part of it.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't want to, listen, I get it. You're making a movie called Quantumania where you're going down to the micro quantum realm. I don't expect there to be not a lot of practical sets. But it shows. It feels, it feels fake. And I like it when things feel gritty and real, and actual acting and actual lighting and all that other stuff. But I digress. Listen, it was a popcorn movie. I mean, I don't know what you expect, but there was some good storytelling in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Just because it's comics doesn't mean it has to be silly and played for laughs and jokes. But yeah,
funny. I do see people are like, I feel like I missed the beginning when I start at the beginning. It's because I like to start conversations in the second act. It's an old trick. Makes you feel like
a little in media res.
It makes you feel like, what did I just miss? And then you become invested trying to figure out what's going on. So
nothing. You missed nothing.
You missed nothing.
But it is. But in fact, you didn't miss anything, right? Because today is the exciting kickoff of TPK Con.
Yes, this is actually the pre-show for the show. So this weekend is Third Party Con, and I'll keep mentioning it throughout. And we are the host. And at 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, they're going to start off with keynotes. And there's keynotes from, let's look up the schedule, shall we? I know mine's in there.
Yeah.
Let's see, because I had to record it. Let's see. First, we have the Pathfinder 2E mod keynote from the Reddit people, and that's pretty cool. And then we have the drive-through RPG keynote, where they talk about like Infinity. Then we have a Roll for Combat and Battlezoo keynote with myself and Mark Seifter, where we actually have a whole bunch of new announcements and one super secret announcement. And then we have Aldrich Games and then Legendary Games keynotes. So that's today from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Pacific.
Yep. And it's going all weekend through President's Day. It's actually even going on Monday. In fact, I believe the segment that I pre-recorded is going to be on Monday. So make sure you check that out. It'll be interesting.
Here is the schedule for people. And
nice.
All the events will be here. that are video. And then there's going to be games like all over the place. All I know is our Discord, we're hosting like hundreds of games. I don't know. I'm not in charge of games anymore. All I know is I looked at my Discord and I saw like a billion new channels. And I was like, I guess those are the games. So, because I'm not doing that. I'm too busy. I'm too busy to game.
Yeah, that is the sad truth, right? Is that sometimes it feels like the more you get involved with this hobby, the less you're able to actually game. Like, and I don't even mean as someone who's like a content creator, full time, like you are in terms of being a publisher and developer, or even someone like me who's like a part time, whatever, amateur content creator. I just mean even as a hobbyist, you get so excited about, you've got 5 books that you've picked up that you need to read through, and you're all excited about, and you're like, okay, I want to start a new campaign, but I'm waiting for this new book to come out from some publisher because I really want to use those rules in this campaign, or I really want to use that campaign setting. And so you find yourself almost like forestalling starting playing a game because you're waiting for the next big drop or the next big release, or you have so many other things in your back pocket. It could be distracting sometimes. Sometimes it's like people make too many good games. You need to just chill.
Hey, man, you're talking to a video game player here. You're talking to someone who needs to.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like Octopath Traveler 2 is coming out, and I just saw a review. They're like, yes, it's a great 80-hour game, and I'm just sitting here like, I'm like happy and sad. I'm like, I don't have 80 hours. Couldn't you make it a 30-hour game?
Yeah, exactly.
Or even a 20-hour game? I would have been fine with that. I'm like, 80 hours? 80 hours? That's a lot of game, man.
Yeah, that's like, I think, well, I don't play video games anymore, really. But that's sort of like my thing with like, TTRPGs, D&D, Pathfinder, is I find myself torn because like, I'll look at a game and I'll say, wow, that would be a fun adventure, or that'd be a fun campaign, or a cool idea, or a system that I would really like to explore. It's like, what is that? Like a 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 session game, right? If we're lucky and we play once a week, that's at least a year and a half. And then I'm like, oh, do you know how many game systems and new games will have come out that I already have on my shelf waiting to go? But how many more new ones will have come out? I'm like, I don't have time to commit a year and a half to this.
Yet you and I are committing a year and a half to something else now. Because
I'm going to take a year and a half.
It won't take a year and a half. It won't take a year and a half.
You just play slowly. No, Steve is talking about Frosthaven.
Yes.
The new board game. But
yes. But you know what? I don't mind. You know what? But I really, really love tactical board games. So, and it sounds like you do too. So I don't. You see, it's when it becomes work. When games become work, which does happen, it's just like, ugh.
Look, I'll freely admit here, like if you go back and you look at some of the actual plays that we've done on our channel, there are times, and you could see it, where I enjoyed the game, and you could see it. And there are times where I go, this is work. And I am not as good of a professional actor, nor am I well paid, like say someone from Critical Role or Dimension 20. And so I'm sure they have bad days too, but they're paid Professionals, and they're, when it's work for them, they just smile and, do their thing. Whereas for me, there are times when I'm not feeling it, and I'm like, this feels like a lot like work today. And, I wish we could do something else,
Yeah. Now I completely agree. But the nice thing, that's why I like really challenging. I like super challenging RPGs, and I like really challenging board games. It's funny. It's like when I play video games, I really like them, not easy, but I do like to sort of veg out and just relax. And I'm sort of like on, veg mode. But when I'm playing board games or role-playing games, we like it on the, like not Death Stranding, on the hardest of the hardest levels. Like make it as tough as possible, because we just like really want to be challenged and really think through the tactics. And I think it's because you don't really get to do that in any other part of your life without any stakes. Like, there's a lot of things that you have similar instances in your life, but the stakes might be a little too high because it's your life. Here, you're just like on a board game, and if your character dies, so be it. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah, I find that I certainly enjoy that more in board games than in TTRPGs, because in board games, I don't know, I have a different mindset. I don't had this idea that my character, should live or die. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just playing for the challenge. And in TTRPGs, it's a little bit more complicated than that, right? Because there's a lot of other factors going on. The investment, the time, the narrative, and quite frankly, board games are usually pretty well designed around that sort of thing, right? Like, if you die in Gloomhaven or Frosthaven, it doesn't, you might lose the mission. You can just go back and do it again. You know what I mean? Or your character respawns in town. It's not a big thing at all. That's a little bit. It's harder to do that kind of quick pass in a TTRPG.
Dark Souls. That's what I was trying to think of. I don't know why I was thinking Death Stranding for some reason.
I see that Tall Aaron said, "Give me a long year or 2 year long RPG group for one campaign, and I'm in heaven. I do not even care if I run it or plan it. That's just my jam." I mean, listen, I agree. There is kind of that deep story, character growth, fun moments, that sort of organic, natural, slow burn that you can only get from a very long campaign. I know even I have talked at length about, like, let's do a 10-session campaign or do a 15-session, 20-session campaign. But you lose something about, when you do that, for sure. So I definitely feel that.
So we did enough chit chat. So I was thinking about this topic a bit because there was an article today on Financial Times, and now I got paywalled. Good thing I copied this beforehand. But this article in the Financial Times, it's sort of talking about, like, who owns your childhood and how they're trying to monetize it. And it talked about the OGL, and it was talking about specifically what is D&D, what is it really, and then how do you make money off something as nebulous as Dungeons and Dragons? And I was thinking about how there was a huge price increase by Games Workshop. And that's another whole battle because they're at war on multiple fronts because they also have 3D printers. I mean, think about it. They have, not only are they trying to sell you rules, but they're trying to sell you little pieces of plastic for $100. And now people can make their own pieces of plastic, which is something they probably would never, didn't think would ever happen, not to this scale. And they're at war with that. They have so many wars going on, and they just keep raising prices.
So let me say this as someone who played, or not currently, but has spent most of their life playing GW games, Games Workshop games. Yes, I mean, 3D printing minis is a thing. 3D printers are still not a lot of people have them. But I will say this, my experience when I was playing, I didn't see a lot of people with proxies, but I'll take another page, which is Magic the Gathering.
Right.
And Magic the Gathering, obviously for tournament play, by the way, this goes for Warhammer as well, Warhammer 40K as well. You can't come in with an artificial, copy of a card. You can't come in with an unofficial miniature, which is fine. But not a lot of people play at competitive levels. Most people play very casually. And nowhere is this more clear in Commander, in Magic the Gathering. And yet, in that community, there is very little people who proxy cards. And you can get great, amazing proxies off the internet. You can get them out of China, very cheap, very affordable, great looking. And most people would say, like, I'm not buying this to swindle somebody. I'm just buying it because I don't own a copy of this card and I'm not going to pay the money for it. And that happens. But most people, not only do most people try to get the real cardboard, but most people go above and beyond. Let me get the hollow foil. Let me get the special edition full art, textless. People do invest in these games, even when there is a free or cheap or kind of somewhat gray area in order to acquire them. I think people, at some level, I think some people appreciate supporting the brand, but I think being real, being official does matter to a lot of people.
So with that, the whole point of this article was that who owns your childhood? Like, if you're played D&D, like, well, is that your childhood? Is that Watsy's childhood now? Can they change it? Sure. And this even happened, a very recent example, which is what brought us into this, is Star Wars and Marvel movies. I mean, Star Wars is probably the most recent example I can think of, because now I was a gargantuan Star Wars fan growing up, a huge one. I could probably tell you anything about any of the original trilogy, like the most, rare, esoteric, bizarre factoids. I knew them all. I've seen all the movies infinite numbers of times, and I don't know why, it just connected with me. And and then the prequels came out, and I was like, I was excited, but yet worried, and sure enough, I had reason. The first one's atrocious. The second and third one, there's actually decent stories in there if you cut it in half, but they're not as bad. They're not great, but I can see at least they were trying, as opposed to 7, 8, and 9, which are just beyond atrocious. But there's a perfect example of trying to take over your childhood. And even recently on the Super Bowl with the Disney 100 commercial, so they're starting all these commercials talking about Disney's 100th year anniversary, which is pretty amazing if you think about it, that now they've been around 100 years. And like, of all the 100 years in the commercial, of all the things they kept showing over and over again, they kept showing Rey from Star Wars. I'm like, you got 100 years to choose from of everything Disney's ever done, and that's the one you're latching on to.
I mean, if you're a 15 or 20-year-old kid, that's your Luke Skywalker.
No, it's not. That has more to do.
We're getting old, Steve.
I know. No. Well, I'll tell you why I know it's not, because that has to do mostly with failing sales, because no one is booking the Galactic Cruise. The restaurant, which sounds amazing, which I was thinking of going to because I'm going to Florida. Oh, next week I'm going to Florida. Going to see spring training. Going to be seeing the Mets. That they are really trying to target younger females is a big target of Disney's right now, and Star Wars. So that's why they're doing that. And I get it. But the point is, marketing is targeting what you want your fandom to become. And right now it's like, are they ruining my childhood by continuously trying to come out with new content to make money? And by the way, the reason I can tell you this stuff doesn't work is because I have a lot of friends who own big stores here that sell mostly vinyl pops, but they tell me what sells. And they say their Star Wars stuff, nothing sells. Especially, right? Like, they said no one buys it. But what was their number one seller, which is going to actually make you kind of sad when I tell you? Harry Potter, by far. Which is, I know everyone wanted to boycott the game. I knew this was going to happen. Everyone was boycotting the new game that just came out. It was like, boycott. It's already in the top 10 most popular games in the history of Steam of all time. Like,
it's gonna crush. I mean, if
it crushed. It doesn't matter.
I mean, again, fandoms are gonna fan.
Yeah,
and
that's why they're called fans.
Yeah,
aka fanatics.
But I mean, listen, there was also a time and a place where Elvis was the number one selling musician. There was a time and a place where Michael Jackson was the number one selling musician. I mean, right? Things move on. You talk about owning your childhood. Well, listen, there's some new property that is being, generated and created today that is going to become the Star Wars of the future. And it's going to be someone else's kid's childhood. And then, yes, what's going to happen is those kids are going to grow up and they're going to love it. And then 20 or 30 years from now, some executive is going to realize that those kids that love that franchise are now adults with adult paychecks and adult bank accounts. And they're going to try to milk the hell out of them for all they can. And we're going to be right back where we are. And that's exactly what's happening with Dungeons and Dragons. That's exactly what's happening with Magic the Gathering. It's exactly what's happened and has been happening with Star Wars and pretty much every other IP. Star Trek as well. I refuse to watch any of the new Star Trek stuff, even though people say Brave New World's okay. But
I couldn't get into Brave New World. It was all right. But Lower Decks is great. I love Lower Decks.
But it's a cartoon, and I can't jive on a cartoon.
So good.
But
it doesn't matter. It's fun.
My point is I think it's just a cycle. It's just a cycle of things.
Yeah, I guess. I guess it is the cycle. But when we were saying this, is that so? One of my friends, Jason, pointed out that. Think about like even things like printers, like now, and everyone knows this, you get an inkjet printer, they literally are designed to fail. Like they literally stop working. It's in the software to make them stop working after a certain amount of time. So you buy a new one. And you have to get subscription. Like you get HP. First thing they do is like order a subscription service for ink. And, it's like, so everything is becoming a nickel and dime subscription service. Every single thing. And then they even had the whole thing where if you wanted heated seats, they were testing this out in South Korea.
Pay to unlock it.
You had to pay to unlock features in your car. So if you wanted heated seats, it was like $5.99 a month, or you can unlock it permanently for like $500.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh my God.
And I don't know. We have a weird thing about it, right? Like I have satellite radio in my car, and technically that signal is beaming down to me constantly, but I don't pay for it, so I don't get it. I mean, I say this as someone who pays for my Spotify. I pay for my subscription to Epidemic Sound so I can play stuff on YouTube. I pay for Envato so I can use commercial copyright DRM-free images and sound clips without getting copyright struck. I pay for my Zoom. I pay for Zencaster. I pay for Adobe. I have like I don't know, 30 different services that I pay for each month that I have nothing to show for, right? Like I own nothing.
You rent it. You base everything's a rental. But
the only thing I own my car. That's about the only thing I own.
Even that you won't own soon enough. But that's the point. It's like it's sort of like it is fascinating to watch the very slow systemization of all this. Like everyone always argued. They say everyone's like, okay, this is going to sound like a weird analogy, but bear with me for a second. Okay, just bear with me, guys. Because I'm all about the weird analogies, because that's just the way my brain goes. So when I lived in Manhattan, I was in a condo. And it was actually, I think it was the largest condo in Manhattan. It was called Lincoln Towers. It's gigantic if you look it up. And in the condo, we had heat. Our heat was shared. Basically, the condo would pay for the heat. We'd pay the condo, and then everyone shared the heat. And people, some of the older people, were angry because they thought their bills were larger, because they're like, well, why am I, paying for other people's heat? Because I never use the heat, or other people, same things. So there was this big movement when I was there to make it privatized, so every single person would get their own heating bill, and they would pay their own heat. And you could probably see where this goes. And I was like just sitting there like, oh my God, you guys are so stupid. We have the largest condo in Manhattan. Do you know the economy of scale? Do you know how cheap our heat is? When they start making it that everyone gets an individual bill, our rates are going to go up by $1 billion. At every single board meeting for years, this was an argument, until one day it finally passed. They finally passed it, and I remember going, and they were doing all the math, and they were figuring it out, and they were rewiring the pipes, so everyone's gonna have their own heat, and everyone's gonna have their own bill, and no one's gonna complain. And then they turned it on, and then, boy, I couldn't wait to go to that next meeting, because everyone's bills were sky high, because there goes the economy of scale. Everyone is paying, and people were losing their minds. So like, I thought it was going to go down. I thought it was going to go down. I'm like, oh my God. No one's bills went down. Everyone's bills went up. And then the very next year, because it was like around the year 2007, like when there was a recession and stuff, and there was this thing going on in Manhattan, that they just raised their prices by 18%. And I remember at the meeting, they're like, everyone went nuts. And they're like, what can you do about it? They're like, nothing. Your prices, it's like, your bills went up 18% this year. There's nothing you can do. But if we were still part of the co-op, we would have been able to use our emergency fund and pay this, and your bills would have stayed the same. The point being is that I'm seeing that this constant nickel and diming of like with cable. Remember, it's like everyone's like, oh, everyone wants private services. Everyone wants to have their own HBO and their own Disney and their own Netflix and their own Hulu. And then, sure enough, I'm looking, and my bill for all those services is way more than my cable ever was. Ever.
Well, now to be clear, to your metaphor analogy, nickel and diming people for getting to play fantasy elves is a little different than having basic utilities available in a service to you.
I completely agree, but the point is that that's where it starts, and it's funny because when I was in Manhattan in the 90s and the 2000s, there was a lot of things that you were getting through the building. Like you would get your electricity, you can get your cable, you can get your internet, you can get all this was part of it, right? And a large part of it is that they just didn't have ways technologically to bill individual units. They just didn't, because some of these buildings were built like in the 40s or the 30s. So they just didn't have means to do it. But technology has allowed them to suddenly, instead of you just paying one price for your internet, everyone has their own internet. Everyone has their own cable. Everyone has their own everything. So I saw it happen with utilities first. And now it's getting to the point that everything, including gaming, can be individually customized to your needs and your costs. So everyone will pay exactly what you want.
I mean, they are just giving people what they want, Stephen.
No, I don't think anyone wants this. They say they want it, but they don't want it.
But
they think they want it, but they don't.
Listen, again, heating aside, if people were really, I mean, I just read the same thing that you did, okay, which is earnings report from Hasbro.
All right.
Magic crushed. They did over $1 billion for the first time ever. They just did an incredible, amazing year. They basically said,
we just got rated by Roker Zero.
Oh, nice. I know we have some super chats also.
Yeah, we'll get to the super chats in a second. Guys, definitely send in your super chats, like, subscribe, and we're going to keep going until at 4, a little before 4 is when TPK Con starts, and then we'll stop this, and you can go right into the con and watch the keynotes. I watched them. The first keynote's excellent, by the way. And the third keynote, whose is that? Oh, that's right. That's my keynote, where I'm going to tell you all about the new things going on in the world of BattleZoo and Roll for Combat for 1 hour. And that's at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, in case you want to see that one. Anyhow, what were you saying?
Oh, I was
Magic crushed.
I was just saying Magic did a lot of money. And they said, I think I can't exactly remember what Chris Cox said, but he basically said, we heard some grumbling from the community about there being too much product, but it kept selling off the shelves, and we had to do 3 triple, like everyone was complaining about the unlimited Worlds Beyond and integrating Warhammer 40K. We had to do 4 print runs of a commander set because it kept selling off the shelves every single time we get out there. So you know what? The customers are saying one thing, but they're doing something else. And so long as the customers continue to buy these things like gangbusters, we are going to keep producing product at a rate that, even though the customer says we don't want this, and then they go and buy everything. So, I mean,
yes, because that is a different beast, because that is a product. Now think about it. You and I have both been playing Magic absolutely forever. In fact, let me pull out my 4-digit DCI. My 4-digit DCI card, baby. Look at that. Handmade. Look at that. Hand drawn. Look at that old Wizards of the Coast logo and everything, baby. That's
with the Garfield Games.
I know,
nice.
Garfield Games. I'm so cool.
I used to have an old one, but then I lost it, and I had a new one. And then 1202-8648-46 was my DCI, but of course
4743.
Yours is a lot shorter than mine, but
and it starts at 1,000, so it's really 47453. So
yeah, but anyways, Magic has been around for a long time, but the
point is like that is a game where you buy like the whole point of it is buying cards. Cards are in the set for I think 18 months, and then they go out. So people are used to this whole method of buying and constantly buying cards.
No. But let's be very clear about something, okay? Let's be very clear about something.
Yeah.
I played Magic the Gathering for a long time, and my interest in Magic the Gathering was in Magic the Gathering, the card game. I would go out of my way to get rid of foil cards or special cards or whatever cards, because I would give them to idiots who wanted to pay more money for them so that I could go get copies of the regular cards.
What did you call them?
Idiots.
Okay.
So,
and you wonder why you're bad, by the way.
Yeah. Because I cared about the game. Now I'm not going to hate on anybody who wants to read the Magic the Gathering novels. I'm not going to hate on anybody who wants the Magic the Gathering
I read the novels.
poster on your wall or whatever like that.
I don't have a poster, but I did read the novels.
Or Magic the Gathering Funko Pops. If you want a Gideon
I don't
Jura,
have any.
and
Funko
if you
Pops.
want a Liliana Vess or Gideon Jura and a Jace Bellerin and whatever, a Nissa Ravain on your wall because you think it's awesome, and that's great.
Lillian's awesome.
Okay, but
Jace
Liliana
is awesome. Liliana and Jace are awesome. By the way.
Well, they're arguably both dead now. But what? But that is not the game. But what Magic the Gathering realized is that they could make more money
I'll be right
selling the brand than selling the game. The game almost became ancillary to the brand. Rather than actually being what it is that you're primarily focused on. And now I have complete control of Steven's stream.
You did.
19th in the chat says, I just got Ubiquity dice in the mail. Sweet. Ordered it after hearing about them on Night's Last Call stream on Sunday. Very nice. 19th, are you planning on playing like Hex or something? Are you planning on playing a game that uses the Ubiquity engine? Or did you just want Ubiquity dice because you thought they sounded pretty cool? Yeah, exactly. Smike Eye says people like merchant tchotchkes. They do. I don't, but they do. People, really.
How about this? I wanted to see how much of a geek you think I am. Okay. So I don't own Jace. I don't have any of that stuff. But see what I have? It's the original painting from I forgot what Magic card it is, from Magic the Gathering Unstable Suspicious Nanny. I have the actual artwork for Suspicious Nanny.
Well, that is awesome. I mean, that is fantastic. Like that's great. Again, I think that's great. I think that's awesome, and I love it. And it's pretty cool. But now Smikey's saying, I'm looking at the walls behind you and I think you do. This is all for gaming. This is for playing. I don't have a problem with fandom, by the way, to be clear. I'm not saying that I'm immune to it. Do I have anything here that's for fun? Yes. Like I own this D100. Does anyone need a D100? No, of course not. This is a tchotchke. But the point is, for me, my engagement with things like Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering has always been on the level of the game. Mm-hmm. If the game is good, then I will buy. I don't care about the brand and I don't care about the representation. But what these companies have come to realize, Stephen, is that the brand is worth a lot more than the game. The game is a gateway, maybe.
It's a gateway to the brand.
And maybe nowadays, maybe not even. Right now, you probably have people who are really in bed with the Dungeons and Dragons brand, and they've never played the game once. But they watch actual plays, they love Critical Role, they listen to Glass Cannon, they go, you know what I mean? Like, they're engaged with the brand, but they're not gamers, and they never will be. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. But what I am saying is that if you're Wizards of the Coast and you're looking at people buying up all of your stuff, and you say, who are these people? It's the people who appreciate the brand, not the game. And so that's where your focus is going to go, is how do we make money off of the brand and not the game?
Right. And that is what D&D 6th edition and the VTTs and the monetization is heading to. They're taking the D&D brand because they realize that they have made probably as much money as they can make. If they can't, this is it. They have made as much money as possible on books. They're done. This is literally the peak.
There will always be money to make, but
not nearly enough.
But what I'm saying is, but that is always going to be limited. Like Dungeons and Dragons is never going to become a $1 billion brand.
No.
Through organic growth of the game population and book sales. It's just never going to happen. Ever. Never in a million years. I mean, the fact that Dungeons and Dragons today or whatever is already a multi-$100 million brand is insane to someone who grew up playing the game. But like the idea that they go, no, we want to be a $1 billion brand, and how do we get there? And they're right. And in that respect, their analysts, their execs are correct. How do we make more money? Well, we got to make more D&D Funko Pops, or maybe, I don't know, a D&D movie.
No. That's no. That the way they do it. Those are all I'll get to that in a second. Those are all methods to get the brand out there, and it's all going to go down because I posted this yesterday. Is the profit margin on the digital properties for WotC was 40%.
Yeah, I read that.
40.
40, yes.
40.
Yeah.
That makes, like, seriously, like, technology companies don't even, no one gets 40%. I mean, that is obscene how much that is.
I mean, they're selling ones and zeros for $4.95 a pack.
That's why that they are going. People are like, they're not going all in. They're not going all in. I'm like, they are going all in.
Yeah, I saw that.
All in, and that's why. And people are like, oh, they're going to spend $250 million. Like, they're not spending. I'm like, they're spending $250 million easily.
Also, let me be clear about something. I know everyone wants to poo-poo on the evil corporate greed, and to be clear, it is real. Corporations are, in my opinion, undertaxed. But here's the thing: I'm part of this Magic the Gathering community. I don't play as much anymore, but I know so many people who say, "I love the online experience. I can play from my phone. I can play from my tablet. I can play in bed." I remember flying and going to tournaments and getting a hotel. It would cost you several $100 just to get to a tournament, and then
that was thousands.
Grinding and grinding. Now you can play a tournament from your home.
Yep.
And hey, you know what? When you scrub out and you go 0-2, guess what? You can just pay again and get right back in the tournament.
Right.
Now might say, "Oh my God, that sounds so exploitative." Let me tell you something. Everyone I know that plays competitive Magic loves that.
Yes.
And so, and obviously I'm talking about this from a competitive angle, but I'm sure there's tons of casual people who also say, I really like Magic the Gathering, but I don't want to have to go to the store. I don't want to have to meet people. Maybe I'm, socially anxious. This provides them a fantastic route. And so there's a ton of people who feel very well served by these digital offerings.
Oh, I completely agree. And not only that, the games are way faster. You can get, Magic game going 15 minutes, 3 games going 50 minutes. That's pretty common.
Let's go back to D&D. Let me ask you a question really quick.
Yes.
Okay. This was the great promise that was denied to me because I have played Magic the Gathering on Magic the Gathering Arena, and you are quite right. It is very fast.
Very fast.
But when I first started using virtual tabletops, I started with Roll20, and then we moved over to Foundry when Foundry came out. And I have played D&D 5th Edition. I've played Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I've played Blades in the Dark. I've played Mutants and Masterminds. I've played about 6 or 7 different systems between them. And I had this in my mind, this is going to be a revolution. Combats are going to take 10 minutes. Like it's gonna solve everything. Like no drawing of maps, no having to fumble for new posters or dry erase or gaming paper. No one has to. Where's the mini? I forgot where I put the goblins. There's everything is how far is the distance? People counting squares, trying to figure out the area of effect of a fireball. I thought VTTs were going to be like the promised land that was going to set us free, Stephen. But I have found that they are no faster than playing at the table.
I'll tell you why. There's a very simple reason.
Please, I'd love to. I
can already know the answer. Now, I've been playing BTTs for 12 years.
Right. I need to know, Stephen.
I'll tell you. You should play with me one game, and then it will open your eyes because I completely agree with you. So everyone who plays with me always says the same thing. They always say, "Holy crap, it's so easy and it's like a video game." So what I do is I have scripted buttons for everyone and their characters. So all their spells, all their abilities, all their saves, and all their attacks are a button. So it does go fast. When you play in my games, you click on your character and you say, okay, I'm going to do my attack. You press a button, it does everything.
Who the hell's coding that, though, Stephen?
I have scripts, baby. I got scripts. I have a script. I literally press a monster. I say, generate the scripts. It says, do you want it for 5e or Pathfinder? I say, Pathfinder, please. And it goes through the monster, scrapes it, and it puts buttons for all the spells and all the attacks.
I don't want to have to be a JavaScript developer.
I know. It's free. I didn't have to do anything. It's not even my code. Someone else, I actually wrote code, and then someone else actually wrote code. I literally pressed. Now, you're right. This actually should be built in, but it takes me no time, and I have all the monsters. Now, the best thing, especially for adventure paths, where you fight 5 of the same monsters, it's the same script. And I literally just put a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the monsters, and they're all done. It takes me no time, and our combats go like that. Now, not everyone does that. Everyone is actually using the default interface, or they're using, if you see my games, it will open your eyes, because everyone who plays with me, like, how do I do it? I say, press the button. Like, I don't have to, like, just buttons. That's it. That's all you got to do. You don't have to know anything. It's like you click, you move your character, you press a button, and it does the rolls. Now, I, as a GM, still has to say if you hit or anything, but it'll also go green if you crit. He'll go red if you critically miss. You know, it has little things like that.
Now I don't want to go off on
damage, does everything.
I don't want to go off on a side note here, Stephen.
Yes.
But do you think that makes your players bad players?
Nope.
You don't think that makes it so they don't actually need to know how the game works?
Nope. Because if anything, it allows them to be more complex, because we're at level 14. My poor spellcaster. He's got like this many buttons. He's like, oh my god. I'm like, you wanted every spell. I gave you every spell. Okay. He's like, oh my god, there's so many buttons.
word of wise to anyone out there in the internet land, and you're thinking about making your next fantasy heartbreaker game, okay? And you think, you know what? I don't want to stray too far from the ranch here. We're going to go with the Vancian model. Listen, 20. I think like the most spells that a caster should ever have is probably like 15. When you have high level Pathfinder 2 or someone character and you have like 40 plus spells a day, it's way too much.
Yeah,
it's just way too much.
Boothbay actually says that doesn't fix a player having to measure their movement. You actually, it does, because I mean, I'm using Roll20. If you press the Q button or the right click and then you move your character, it shows you how far they move. So it's all, I have everything in there. I've been doing this for 12 years, and I'm a coder, and I've been coding since the 80s. So to me, this is secondhand stuff, and I'm all about scripting and methodology. So I'm all about making it like that easy. I want it to be so easy for my players, and I actually enjoy it. It's fun for me. Now, you're not a JavaScript program, so you don't care, but I love this stuff.
Okay, so Aaron. Okay, by the way, we do have some super chats.
Yeah, let's go to the super chats. Actually,
but let's go to the super chats. But before we do, Aaron Mortar said something, and that is, by the way, Aaron Mortar on our channel. Nice last call. Bob does this, and it makes me want to jump off of a roof every time he does it. So Aaron says, my one player insists on fumbling around for a few minutes how to add +1 to the auto roll rather than just rolling it and just saying, oh, it's, one higher than whatever the screen shows.
Yeah.
And I feel exactly the same way. I cannot stand it.
I actually have ways to do that too.
Well, you don't need to.
No, if they want. No. I actually don't allow them. No, what I do is there's like tokens. I have stickers you can put on your character, and then you literally just put a +1 in your character. Now, if I really wanted, I can make it look to see if that +1's on your character, and then it would apply the +1 to your rolls, but I'm not that crazy. So I'm like, you want a +1? Boom, you got a +1. Remember to add +1. It's on your character. That's it. I don't go above that. But I could do that. I could do that.
While you go find the super chats, I will just say I would like to have
chats.
Okay, I would like to have a conversation at some point in time.
Oh, I'll show you how I do it. It's awesome.
No.
Oh, okay.
Where I question the value of a game that plays itself for you.
No, it doesn't play itself. All it does is speed up. No, trust me.
No. But what I'm saying is
14th level. I have a story about that in a second. Okay. Let's get to the super chats. Because I have a story for everything. Lollipop Candy sent a $10 Canadian, and he said, TTRPGs need to continue growing. Hoping people continue to innovate with different systems. It would be a real shame if things become stagnant because interesting things don't get enough spotlight. Yeah, I totally know where you're going with that, because it does feel like 5e was getting very stagnant. And one of the beautiful things I do like about Pathfinder when they do their adventure paths is when they were doing 6-part adventure paths, now they have less, a lot of them are 3 parts because those are just better, is that they would always do, and people might not know this, they would always do a traditional adventure path, quote traditional, and then they would always do a crazy and wacky one, and that was their pattern. They'd always do a more traditional straight-laced adventure path, and then kind of a experimental adventure path, and they'd always go back and forth. And
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and those experimental ones, some of them were failures, like the evil one, which, by the way, everyone said they wanted. That's the worst selling adventure path by a mile. It's the one where you play evil characters.
The Bloodlords?
I don't even remember. No, the old one from first edition.
Second Darkness?
From first edition. I forgot what it was called. I never even played it. No one played it because no one really wants to play evil. And you can play evil. You don't have to. We did Jade Region and they played evil. Okay? You don't need an adventure path to tell you how to play evil. You want to play evil, you can play evil. Simple as that. The point is that Paizo really does innovate, and that's one of the main reasons I enjoy their products. And even you, seeing your reviews over the last couple of months of like, you might not always like all the directions they go in, but there's a reason you're giving A through Fs on your rankings, because at least they're trying, man. At least they're going out there.
Yeah, and also I think what's also very telling about our rankings is how many people then show up in our comments and say, "I love those Fs." Right?
Right.
Which means that Paizo is hitting some people with certain a group of their items or feats or spells or whatever, and then they're targeting a very different group with another one, and they are trying to, there is something for everyone. That being said, Black Tentacle Shot is broken and needs to be errated immediately. So
there you go.
GM's out there, listen, don't allow it. It's too I'm telling you, it's broken. Just pre-ban it. You've seen it. You know what I'm talking about.
I actually haven't seen it yet, but I'll look it up now.
Ronald, the rules lawyer, covered it when he covered, I think, alchemical items or whatever on his stream.
Well, I actually have a story about that, but that I can't tell you outside. Okay. I can tell you privately, but I can't tell you because I know a little bit about some of that stuff. Mr. Smith's government class on a $10 super chat as a DM to branch... as a DM to a bunch of other teachers who can roleplay an entire session without combat, the struggle is real. I'm still sitting on Kingdoms and Followers from MCDM. That is when we're talking about not having enough time to play and do everything. And that's life, man.
I mean, there's 5 games that I would love to run a campaign for.
It's funny. I see my kids and they're sitting on the couch and they're bored. And I was like, I don't think I've been bored in 30 years. I'm like, I don't think I've ever had a time to be bored. Like, I can't even remember what it was like. Even when I go on vacations, I'm never bored. I always have something to do.
I'm not trying to say like I have one foot in the grave or something, but I am at some point in my 30s, I became acutely aware of, you know what? I don't get to do this forever, and so that's actually been worse for me though, Stephen, because now I feel like, because I'm like, you got to get this campaign right, Derik.
Oh yeah, I know.
Right, when I was a kid, I didn't care.
Right.
I didn't care. Like I was like, I got all the time in the world. I could play infinite Dungeons and Dragons for the rest of my life. And now you start to realize, you're like, I don't know how long these friends are going to be around. I don't know how. People move, people change. Sadly, people pass on. Like, as time goes on, you get less and less time. So now when I sit down to play, I'm like, I feel a lot of pressure. Pressure to deliver.
I know. Rage of the Promised Land sent $5 and says that's an independent 3D printer proxy armors are more for the cool factor. So he was talking about when we were talking about 3D printing armies and stuff.
No. I think, listen, let me be clear.
So Hell's Vengeance, by the way, that was the evil one. That was the evil one.
Hell's Vengeance. If I was still into Games Workshop games or whatever, I would probably own a 3D printer by now as well. The costs have come down incredibly. The technology's gone, and then up incredibly. And the STLs that the people generate and stuff like that, like, it's crazy. It's wild. We have one of the guys from our Night Celeste called Nick. His dad's into production and 3D printing, and he makes stuff all the time for us, and it's incredible. It's amazing. I love it. So, by the way, some people are saying, who doesn't want to play evil? This actually happens a lot, is that a lot of people said they wanted to play evil, and they wanted to, and it was very popular in the Paizo boards, so they did it. And no one bought it. So
There you go. Say what you
Well.
will. No one bought it. They tried and it failed horribly.
I think alignment is the dumbest thing that ever exists, and I think you should get rid of it completely and entirely. And I hate it. All parts of it. Just get rid of it. It's stupid.
Well, now they actually they agree because they've gotten much more sophisticated in their campaigns. You can play anything really. They're pretty they're pretty alignment neutral. And the funny thing is, you'll love this, Derik. If you listen to our Extinction Curse, they're starting to realize how they keep bringing it up. They're the bad guys. Like, they're not the good guys in this adventure. And I'm like, you guys keep doing this stuff and keep killing these people. I'm like, you're the bad guys. You're the bad ones. You're not the good guys at all.
Are we the baddies?
Right.
Is that what
They keep saying that. They're starting to realize that they're not good. Because it's funny. It's all by however you look at it, you know.
Again, I mean, I like I said, I've said this before, but like, I understand the premise of alignment, and actually, it makes a fair amount of sense in some ways, because in original D&D, your characters were going into creatures' homes and killing them, and then taking all their stuff. Now, to be clear, this is how 99% of people still play RPGs today. But back then, they said, you know what? People might have a weird feeling about that, because you might think, is this really right? Right? Even if these creatures are bad, is it still justified to just go into their homes and kill them all and take all their possessions?
That's exactly right. That's exactly what's happening.
And so what Gary Gygax did is he said, okay, they are evil with a capital E.
Right, yeah.
Right, and you are good with a capital G. And so this is or lawful and chaos, if we want to be really specific. This is a justified moral act.
Yes.
Right? Slaughtering them is a moral imperative. So you get to be good and be a murder hobo, and you don't have to lose a wink of sleep about it.
You know,
now, fast forward 50 years today, and we say
you cut me off. I was about to talk about that.
Okay,
keep going. Yeah. Now keep going.
and we fast forward today, and we still have alignment. And people out there going like, "Oh, alignment isn't a monolith." Goblins shouldn't just be evil. Okay, fair play. Did you kill a lot of goblins? You probably did.
Right.
Did you take all their possessions? Yeah, you probably did, right? Did you slaughter a bunch of orcs, gnolls, all these things that nowadays people are much more enlightened, and we say, no, these are real people living their gnoll life or their goblin life or their orc life. Heck, it's an ancestry that you could play. They're just as real as you and me. They're no longer these caricature, of evil. Okay, fine. We're still mercilessly slaughtering them, and it's almost worse now, in a way.
Well, that's actually why I said it's like they are an Extinction Curse. They're basically doing genocide, and there's people trying to. It's like hard to say without spoiling the whole adventure path. But basically, I don't want to spoil it. But basically, people are invading Absalom and the Isle of Kortos, and it turns out they're just there to take back something Aridin stole from them like thousands of years ago. And it's like, well, who's the baddie here? Because you're defending Aridin, who stole this from these people, and they just want it back. So who's the bad guy here? And they're like, yeah, maybe we're the bad guys. Like we're defending someone who stole something from a society and that destroyed them in over time because of what Aridin did. So it's actually a fairly complex moral quandary, and I'm actually having a lot of fun with it because it keeps coming up that I'm like, I don't really know here who's good or bad, and even they're not sure anymore. It's really fun. That being said, I couldn't tell you the alignment of a single character, nor do I care, because they are what they are.
Right. And also, let's go back to 1970. Let's go back to 1974, which again, I respect what Gary was doing. See, Gary Gygax and his horrible 1974 Dungeons & Dragons. Guess what? Gary Gygax and his people, they were better role players than you. Yes, that's right. And you know why? Because you just heard Steven said, I don't even know what my players' alignments are. Are you aware that in the original first edition Dungeons & Dragons, that it was the GM's responsibility to track and give you a grade at the end of every session on how well you played your alignment. And when it came time, and if you violated enough of your alignment, by the way, the GM would declare in an alignment audit that your alignment had shifted. And because your character had undergone such a shift of mindset, you would actually lose all the experience that you had gained that level and be reset back to the beginning of the level. And the amount of that you played into your level also determined how long it took you to level up and train. So back then, alignment mattered a lot more, right? Like the game actually had a way to, unfortunately, it was punish, not reward, but it would punish you for being in violation of your alignment. So today, and also it explained why you didn't have to feel bad about killing all the orcs. But we got rid of both of those things. So I don't really know what purpose it serves today.
Well, the only purpose it serves, and this actually came in my game of Extinction Curse, of Agents of Edgewatch, is they were fighting a devil, and they had protection from good on. So then I literally had to say, what's your alignment? Because if any of you are good, guess what? You got a -1 to hit, baby. Because he's got protection from good on you. And so suddenly that mattered. That's when that was it. That was like the only time it's ever come into play. Ever, now I think about it. So, by the way, super chats, we answered all of them. Very few this time. If you ask a super chat, I promise we're going to answer it right away. We're going to interrupt exactly. I will literally cut Derik off. I'll mute his mic, and we'll answer your super chat if you give us one away.
I'll happily mute myself.
You'll mute yourself. But wait, I want to go back to what you were saying.
Okay.
Is that, would you play D&D if you had a VTT that made it very video gamey and made it as fast as you were saying, where you can do combats, even complex combats, in 10, 15 minutes, that it becomes the Magic of the Gathering for D&D, where Magic the Gathering, we'll talk real quick, Curtis, I'll do that in a second. Let me finish my thought, then we'll do your question.
You're all talk.
Chris Hansen says, I've always liked alignment, but I've always used it as a tentpole. You can stray from either on purpose or because of reaction, but it's a perspective you always come back to for $10. That's more of a statement than a real question. But yeah, the alignment is definitely used. It always seems to be something that comes into play like at the first couple of sessions and then quickly forgot it and then never comes up ever again. And then they just are what they are, you know? Yeah. It just, it is.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, it is, my thing on alignment is either use it the way it's intended to be used.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is a hammer, a stick that you use to punish players for violating the terms of their alignment. And that's the way it was originally designed. And I think it works in that regard.
Right.
And if you have problems with that alignment system, that's fair. You can get rid of it.
You can, there's a lot.
But don't do this half thing where you have alignment, but it doesn't matter. And it's like the points on who line is it anyways, right? It's all made up and the points don't matter. Right. That's basically the way alignment matters in the today's D&D terms. And again, I just say, like, either have it, like, again, people were talking in chat and I said yes, there was. Back in the day, there was literally languages for your alignment. There was neutral evil, the language. Oh. Right, like it was a part of the game. Oh, I'm getting shut off.
Myth of the mythos of the day. You're gonna like this one. He says, "I just wanted to say thanks for all the coverage and content over the last month. I signed up for Battles of Ancestries, and I'm loving the Doppelganger for $10. I know you love the Doppelganger.
Doppelganger was, I will admit, was good.
Oh,
but listen, don't think that gets you off for the rest of them.
But did you see Slimes? Did you look at Slimes yet, or?
No, I have not seen Slimes.
I'll give you Slimes, and then I saw. I told you Stethos.
Yeah, the Stethos, the snake Medusa.
Yeah, the snake dudes. They're awesome. I was kind of because Mark really. He actually wrote the original ones on Pathfinder, so he really pushed it hard. And he's like, no, I want that. I'm like, aren't they just like Medusas? Like, no, they're really cool. I was like, okay. And I read them, I'm like, oh my God, these are really cool. Like, they're really interesting. So
95% of the PCs I make are humans, so you're talking to the wrong guy.
Well, guess what? You can be half human, half snake person.
No, just all humans. Just 100% human.
Well, you're boring. Well, when we play Frosthaven, guess what? No humans.
There are no humans.
That's right. So you have to play.
Used to be. The human scoundrel.
What? The scoundrel was human?
Yeah, humans and scoundrel was human. There's humans in Frost. Well, there's humans in Gloomhaven. I don't know about Frosthaven, but there's
Gloomhaven. There was a human. The scoundrel.
Yeah, the scoundrel's a human.
I think it was. Oh yeah, it was a female human. I think right.
No, I think it's a male, but
it's a male?
It could be.
I don't remember. I didn't play the scoundrel. I don't remember.
I'm 99% sure that it was.
I played Craighard. No, he was not a human.
So part of the reason I play human PCs is because I want to be able to identify with the difficult choices that my characters are making through the lens of an experience that I am feeling comfortable with.
If I was you, I would, if I was your GM, first thing I'd happen to you is you touch something and poof, roll that chart and let's see what ancestry you become, because it ain't going to be human.
Now that would be almost more acceptable to me, because then I'm like, I have to ground this in the reality of being a human.
There you go. I would do that to you too.
You know, say like elves, for example, are immortal, near immortal, ageless beings who are like several hundred years old at the start of play, and people just go, +2 dex, low light vision. It's a crime against humanity, honestly. The way that elves and dwarves and all of these ancestries are misrepresented by millions of players around the world. It's very sad.
Anyhow, back to what I was saying. Now, I've been in many tournament Magic where you run out of time. Like, it's happened to me more than once.
Sure.
Because you only get 50 minutes and 3 games. I've had games and there was, especially back in the day when you'd have some decks, like you play those blue decks. Blue decks, they can take freaking forever. It's like those decks just keep going and you just run out of time. And I've had to count up and see, like had ties and stuff. You never run out of time if you go online. So would you be
your question,
interested in that for D&D? Which is where it's going, by the way.
And no, and I'll tell you why. Because I enjoy the ritual of things.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I actually do agree with you.
And I think, as annoying as it is, now, to be fair, if the game becomes too complex, then the importance of the ritual starts to get trumped by the realities of the game situation. But I think that there is something inherently part of the game experience of, like, and I know this sounds silly, but like counting the squares and seeing who I can hit with my lightning bolt and erasing my hit points and writing in the new value. I think that there is a ritual to that I enjoy. I think the process of playing the game of Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder is as important to me as the outcome, right?
Yeah.
I enjoy going through that procedure, I suppose, of playing. Like, a great example of this as a metaphor, I see people complain a lot about board games that I love. And one of the things that they say is, I'm usually the guy or the girl, I'm the person who owns all the board games, right? It's like kind of my job to teach. And I see a lot of times, one of the things that I see a lot of board games, people complain about, say, it's a pain in the ass to set up. It takes too long. I love it. I love taking a board game out of the box and putting it out and taking the little, put the gold coin stack here and the gold coin stack here and the gold. And I get it on TTS or on, Steam or on your iPad. Boom, instantaneous, the whole game set up in an instant, ready to go. Let's go, baby. Right? I get it. But I enjoy that process of, setting up the game and using my hands and doing it myself.
I love, I got a great chat here. Charnos Churon.
I saw that.
I disagree with nearly everything this guy says.
And you know what? And you know what, Kronos? You know what, Kronos? I respect you all the more for it. Yeah. So well on you.
I disagree with him too. That's why he's on the show. Actually, that's not true. I see your point in most everything, and I understand where you're coming from.
Right.
And I actually agree. To a point. I love setting up board games, but I'll tell you, after my 100th game of Gloomhaven, and I was the one who always had to set it up while everyone else is eating dinner, I was like, can you help? I mean, it was like, it got a little much, And
then this guy, he tried to come at me with Amber Diceless. I have played Amber Diceless. I have played Amber Diceless many, many times. Not my favorite game in the world, but it's fine.
So, by the way, $5 super chat says, I want to try Blood Wars, but we'll play a tyrant champion. I want to force enemies to kneel before they're better. I'm a student now instead.
Oh, well, that's kind of dark there.
I know. I was like, damn, man. Okay. Good luck with that. Good luck taking over the universe. So, by the way,
good luck storming the castle.
I know, right? Good luck. So, because I have a story for everything. So, my story on games playing themselves. Go back to 1998. That was the year when Star Wars was still ours. We still owned it. There was still just like not that many movies out and not that many video games.
Newsflash, you never did own Star Wars.
I owned it in my heart. In my heart, I owned it. And back then, it was like, then Star Wars was just starting to come out. Like we had TIE Fighter and X-Wing, and there was all these new games coming out. And they were coming out with a brand new Star Wars strategy game. And I love strategy games. Star Wars Rebellion. And I'll never forget, I was so excited to get this game. Came out February 28th, 1998. Almost 25 years ago, which is freaking pathetic and horrible now I think about it. But anyhow, the point being, I got this game and a few things happened. First, the colors, I never realized this. In the video game, the good guys were red, bright red, and the bad guys were bright green. So the Rebel Alliance is bright red, and the Empire is bright green. I was like, huh? Because mentally, that doesn't even... Like, it had a very hard time.
What, because of the lightsaber association?
No, it's not even a lightsaber. Yes, lightsaber, but also red seems evil, green says good. Like, and I'm like, what? But that's not the point. The main thing is that it gets to a point where the game just plays itself. And I remember that I was sitting there doing nothing. I'm like, this game is just playing itself. Like, I don't have to do anything. It was just like taking care of itself. And I was like, this game sucks. I was like, I hated it. And I remember it's like, and that's when I was still a baby game designer. I was realizing, you know what? You need to have a role in these games. And actually on The Escapist just this week, they had a really good, they do these like 10-minute like videos, essays, and they had an excellent essay about the difference between being an observer in a video game like Last of Us, which by the way, I hated that video game. I didn't hate it, but I did not like it. And
but I can promise you would not have liked it.
I played about a third of it, and then I was like, this stinks. And I couldn't figure out why, but he explains is that because it's an incredibly linear game that you are basically the cameraman for, and occasionally get to like have some input on what happens. Sure. And I'm like, that's it. That's why I didn't like it, is that it is an actual game that kind of plays itself, and it's like a choose your own adventure game, but even more linear. Yeah. And I was like, now there are other games like that, like God of War, which by the way is very linear, but the story is so well told, and the action scenes that where you do take control are so fantastic and fun and interactive, I don't mind. So it's a careful balance between the two.
Yeah, by the way. And again, like, I mean, when I'm thinking about a game, and this is true for card games, it's true for video games, which I don't play much of, but it's definitely true for card games, board games, and yes, even TTRPG games, is I want a game that requires enough care and attention from me,
right,
that I feel like I am involved. But I don't want you to make me do things just so that I have something to do, right? I don't like games that give me busy work.
Right.
And that might sound crazy, but there are TTRPGs, there are even board games that give you busy work. You know, have you ever found yourself like tracking a status? Like, I'll give you an example of busy work in a standard, in the way that most people play their games. And by the way, I'm someone who, I do like some older school games. Like tracking arrows in Pathfinder 2 is busy work, right? Because the game made them light bulk. You can have a ton of them. It doesn't really matter. The game is designed for you to basically have all your arrows at all times. Now, you can track them. Of course you can. The game says you should, theoretically. But it's busy work. You're just doing something to do it, right? And so when people say, oh, I love Foundry because it tracks my arrows for me, Okay, but then why are you doing it at all? Right? Like, if it doesn't matter and it never will, then automating it isn't some great victory against the tyranny of the arrows, right? So anyways, I'm just saying that like there is a balance that needs to be struck. I want my actions that I take to be meaningful, but I also don't want them to be busy work.
Yeah, but I think as you get better as a game designer, you realize and you know where those balances are. And the best game designers, I mean, I can see it. Like, and I'm talking about whether it's a video game or whether it's a TTRPG, like, like they balance between what is automated and what's not.
Yeah.
Entity had a $5 super chat. Actually, I've seen this one. Loser puts the game away. That's the way we play board games. Okay, that is in theory a good idea. Have you ever put away Gloomhaven?
Yeah, right. If the game's in like
let me tell you, you need a PhD to put that game away. Okay, like it's a game to put the game away, and if you fail that game, you can break the game. So you got to be very careful how you put that game away.
Right. Like if we were playing a longer board game, one that would probably require multiple hours, usually, loser buys the first round or whatever, like we'd go out for some drinks afterwards or something.
Well, not only that, like when I played Gloomhaven, we played it very rarely in my house. I had to go to Connecticut to my friend. So I brought the game. And then we would play in a common area in an apartment complex. So you couldn't just leave it out. So we'd have to set it up every time and then take it away and pack it up every time because I'd have to bring it home. I wish I could just leave a game on the dining room table and just keep going, but that's never going to happen. Rage the Promised End for $5 said, my experience, you're going to like this one, of 4E is that it had a good balance of speed and combat and ritual. My players were also the type to know their turn before it got to them.
I mean, 4E relied on players being engaged. I mean, long story short, you just needed to be, this isn't an assault or anything like that, but like there's a lot of people play TTRPGs because it's kind of like when it's your turn, the spotlight's on you, you have to say what you're doing, you have to interact, and then you can kind of like, you don't have to really pay attention to what's going on for the rest of your turn until it's your turn again. Or maybe if the GM starts attacking you and telling you to make saves. Fourth edition, because of the way that the system worked and because of needing to remind people of what bonuses you gave them, I think it required players to be a little bit more heads up and engaged. And if you did have players that played that way, it could play fantastically well. If your players did not play that way, it could grind to a horrible slog. So
Slogfest.
But it was a fun game. I enjoy it.
So
I see people talk about arrows. Someone else mentioned rations. Also true. Like you do look deep. If you look into the DNA of a game like Pathfinder 2, you start to see it where like a week. Okay, by the way, for those, just to be clear, bulk, you can hold some number of bulk plus your strength modifier, depends, but it's like 3 plus your bulk, 5 plus your bulk, 5 plus your strength, 3 plus your strength before you're encumbered, right? So, most people are holding somewhere in the neighborhood of, 5 to 7 bulk or something like that if you're, a fighter type. But anyways, then below a bulk is light bulk, which is 1/10 of a bulk and doesn't actually count until you get all the way up to 1. A week of food, a week of rations in Pathfinder 2 is not 1 bulk. It is a light bulk for the whole week.
It's Slim Jims.
That means
it's Slim Jims. That's why.
A lot of Slim Jims. I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of calories worth of Slim
Jims. It's magic.
Okay.
It's lime. It's litmus bread? I forgot.
Lembas bread.
Lembas bread.
Okay. Here's the thing. You would be right, except Lembas bread is an item that is in Pathfinder 2, and so there already exist magical rations. But my point isn't to knock this. My point is simply to say I actually agree with that decision, along with the arrows, because that's not the kind of game Pathfinder 2 is anymore. It's really not the game D&D is anymore. Right? It used to be a game where every torch mattered, every ration mattered, right? We just don't play those kind of games anymore. And quite frankly, there are games that are designed, like if you go play Forbidden Lands, it is very much an RPG system that is based around tracking your resources and keeping them tracked. So the fact that Pathfinder 2 sort of, whatever did, but it's like, okay, why don't you just get rid of it? Like at a certain point, it's like, what are we doing here? What are we even doing here? That's what I was like.
Well, I even have in my games, we have what's called the hand wave heal. I don't do this at the lower levels because it actually does matter. Like you're healing,
treat wounds, everybody's full.
Right. Because everyone has it where you can heal like every 5 minutes or 10, every 10 minutes. So in my games, I say everyone's like, "Can we do the hand wave heal?" I say yes, and I just do the math in my head. I'm like, 1 hour goes back, you're all healed. Done.
Yeah, right. And then once you have people like, once you have a bunch of people with lay on hands and a bunch of people with Goodberry and a bunch of people with treat wounds and continual recovery and ward medic, you can just say 10 minutes. You can say 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah, no, that's what we do in our, we do the hand wave. Well, these guys have 200 plus hit points, so even then it takes a while. So I always say, okay, they always say, can we do the hand wave heal? If you watch any of my live streams, and it's like, yeah, and then I just say 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour goes by, and that's it. Yeah. And I don't have to keep, they don't have to roll anything. In their combat, they need to roll when they're downing potions and stuff, but then casting spells.
So let me ask you this, Stephen.
Yes.
If you're going to hand wave the time and say that it's 40 minutes, then why have it take any amount of time at all?
Because in my games, I always have a ticking clock. Like, for example, well, I'll tell you why it mattered, because in not Extinction Curse, in Ages of Edgewatch, they were guarding someone over 72 hours, and after specific times, things would happen. So we actually had to keep track of the time. So they kept getting, it was actually like a raid. They kept getting raided. So every X amount of hours, a new raid would occur. So it did matter. And in fact, one of the raids occurred while they went to sleep. And then they literally had to wake up and someone took off their armor, and he spent 10 rounds putting on his armor, and he had literally spent all 10 rounds. The combat went like 25 rounds because it was like 3 combats in a row, kept going. He literally spent 10 rounds, like 2 sessions putting on his armor.
Well, let us not say that you are not in good company for, and I quote,
yes,
game time is of the utmost importance. Failure to keep careful track of time expenditure by player characters will result in many anomalies in your game. The stricture of time is what makes the recovery of hit points meaningful. Likewise, time spent adventuring in the wilderness removes concerned characters from their bases of operations,
correct,
be they rented chambers or strongholds.
Correct.
You cannot have a meaningful campaign if strict time records are not kept.
Correct.
And that is as Gary Gygax, page 37 of the first edition.
I don't do strict, but I do keep track of I do keep track of the time. I'll say it's like 10 o'clock, 11, 12, because eventually they will either A, certain things happen at certain times. B, if it takes place at night, that matters as opposed to day if they're outside. But I keep track of all that. It's not a hidden thing though. Like they can ask me at any point what time it is, and I just say. So
to be fair, Pathfinder 2 probably has a spell or skill feat that actually you're screwing over by letting them do that, because there's probably some skill feat that lets you know what time it is at all times.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, you're probably right.
Hey, listen, no, I'm definitely right.
I am sure you are. There's always something for something.
There's always something for something. Just remember, if you ever give anybody anything free, you're cheating. But
well, I guess you're a cheater, and I'm a cheater.
I'm a huge. Listen. I
but let me tell you something.
I've never played a game.
DM is never a cheater.
And so, actually, I know we're about to go into this. We got about 10 minutes till this.
Yeah.
So there's kind of there's been an interesting. Let me get your take on this as a third-party publisher.
Yes.
What are third-party publishing but professional house rules, right? Right. That's what third-party publishing is.
I'm a
right?
second-party publisher.
Okay. Whatever. Okay. Right. My point is.
Yeah.
Well, not to the perspective of your buyer. From your buyer, they're the first party. Paizo's the second party. You're the third party. But anyways, I digress.
No, Paizo's the first party.
So there has been a lot of activity on the Pathfinder 2 subreddit, and as people, predominantly from 5e, have come into the game system. And as they come into 5e, they are looking at the Pathfinder 2 game system, and some of them are making changes to the game, and they are asking people on the forums for help or advice or suggestions or whatever. And there has been, to the point where some of the mods have actually posted, hey, everybody, let's keep calm about this, keep civil about this. There has been a lot of vitriol from Pathfinder 2 players who are basically telling the 5e players, don't house rule the game. The game is fine. You don't have to house rule it. It's perfect. That's why you came to Pathfinder 2.
What's your question?
Do you agree with that?
I can see where they're coming from because 5e is such a loose collection of tools and rules that when we had to do monster part system, we had to literally break out like calculus and unbelievable numbers of third-party writers to figure out the economy in 5e because it doesn't exist. There is no gold economy.
Sure.
There is no economy, and but there is, and there's all these things that are really hidden, and it was mind-boggling. But we figured it all out because it's actually important, and so that. I actually have been wondering about that because you have two very distinct parties. You have 5e players who are used to constantly coming up with their own rules and are very open to using third-party products. And then you have Pathfinder players who will not use third-party products unless they are very well balanced, which is one of the main reasons I even hired Mark, because I'm like, dude, it's going to be hard for me as a third-party publisher unless I have the guy who freaking wrote the rules of the game and can better balance. Our products are better balanced than some other people's, maybe even Paizo's.
Shots fired.
Some of Paizo's. Some. All I know is, what was that thing you hated? That would never be in my product. I was just going to say that. But the point is that I get where they're coming from, but they're not used to it. And 5e is the reason it's so popular is because it is so rules light. And the reason Pathfinder is so popular is because the rules and the math are so tight. And you have two very different mindsets now meeting, so
Yes.
It is fascinating to see what happens.
Well, yeah, I simply meaning, and because there is a certain, and I say this.
I'll
as
tell
someone,
you. Wait, let me finish on this.
Yeah, okay.
I kind of agree because Mark and I have had these long discussions that if you try to fix something, you can. Because the math is so tight. It's like a computer program. You can very easily break a lot of other things.
Yes.
So they're not wrong.
And I know,
that you shouldn't. You got to be very careful when you're fooling around with Pathfinder.
And this is the top rated post right now, top upvoted post from last month. It says, it says from the mods, it says, "Hey all, been seeing a rise in harshness against players asking about homebrew rules. While I recommend playing vanilla Pathfinder 2 to everyone first, let's not forget the first rule of Pathfinder, which says the first rule: this game is yours. Use it to tell stories you want. If any other rule gets in the way of your fun, you can alter it or ignore it as you fit to see your story." And then it says, whatever. And here's what's happening. I mean, it's kind of weird, but there's a lot of ownership issues here. I'm a Pathfinder 2 player on, the internet, and a 5e player comes in and they say, "I want to change some rules." And then as the Pathfinder 2 player, I said, "No, you shouldn't change those rules because you should just play Pathfinder 2 the way that it's meant to be played. The game is well designed and you don't have to do that anymore." And they say, "No, but I want to make these changes." And then as a Pathfinder 2 player, I go, "Well, if you make those changes, you might screw up the game. And then you're going to be back here in a month saying your game sucks."
This is what I recommend. I recommend everyone try Pathfinder at least to level 5 using the core rules. I'd probably even say level 7, but just use the rules as is.
Right.
Then
you're talking to someone. I fundamentally rewrote half the rules in the game for my Pathfinder 2 game.
But the point, you can. But the thing is, you can.
No, but I screwed it up too, Stephen. I had a rule that was way too powerful, and it made hero points extremely powerful and way too powerful.
I know your rule. Your rule's ridiculous.
Yeah, right, but but here's the thing. At the time, I didn't think it. I knew it was more powerful. I just didn't realize how powerful it was because I didn't fully understand the implications of things in Pathfinder 2. Like, for example, critical specialization and the effect that would have on auto-critical hitting. Anyways,
But the point is, right, you got to know the rules, and not everyone is a game designer, and not everyone understands them. It's.
But it feels gatekeepy, Stephen. It feels, for you to even say that.
No. It's not gatekeepy. I'll tell you why. It's not that it's gatekeepy. It's that Okay, I'll give you an example.
Only I, professional game designer Steven.
No.
and Mark
Let me explain this. Shut up.
Simply hope to fathom
Shut up.
the infinite expand. Okay.
D&D is like a soup. You can just throw all this crap in there and eat it, and you'll be fine. Pathfinder is like a complex souffle. And if you're not very careful, you will destroy the souffle because there's a lot of intricate parts in the system, in the molecules of how this is assembled. And it's not that you can't add and subtract ingredients, because you can. But if you're not careful, you might end up with a mess. And that might be fine. You might like that mess. But the point is, just be aware that this is going to happen. And,
you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I have been gun shy. A lot of people said, "Oh, Derik, you should do something for Pathfinder 2. You should do something." I said, "I don't want to, because if I make something for me, it's fine. But if I like make something and put it out there into the internet, there's an idea that it's at least somewhat balanced. But I can't promise you that this won't completely destroy your game, because it's a very complex game, and a lot of things, link together in strange ways.
It's phenomenal. It's incredibly complex. If you looked at the behind the scenes of the math and like how it's tied together, it's elegant and complex and beautiful, and it's basically a computer language. I mean, if anyone who's a coder looks at it, it's like, this is all computer. I mean, it really is.
It's object-oriented programming.
Oh, it's extremely object-oriented.
It's inheritance. It's literally written by a programmer.
It is. But that helps you, because also, if you know what you're dealing with, it'll make it easier for you to then house rule it. Because if you're going in and just assuming I can throw anything in this game and nothing will affect anything, I'm like, dude, you will cascade right. You do a cascade failure. You will cascade right through all the math to things you never experienced or even thought of. And unfortunately, it's like the closest analogy is Magic together, because Magic is very similar to Pathfinder, in my opinion. In fact, I've said it before, they're very similar. If you add some new abilities to Magic without carefully considering, think about it, you can cascade through that game and just destroy games very quickly. That's the easiest analogy I can think of.
Yeah. No, listen, I'm simply saying, I know that this was a very popular topic over the last few weeks.
I'll take a look at that one. I'm going to actually comment on that.
And, and I just thought I would get your opinion on it, because again, there has been a rise in what they said is harshness against players asking about rules.
I'm professional. I'm a professional house ruler.
But I will say, as a segue,
we got like 10 seconds or 30 seconds left.
We've got third-party card income. So if you want to see professionals, or at least very, 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 very dedicated amateurs, and hear what they are offering.
Pazzo's in there too.
And see what they are bringing into the third-party space. I think check it out. There's a lot of really cool publishers this weekend. Yeah. I know that I had an opportunity to sit down and talk with some, and again, I was impressed. I liked what they're producing, and quite frankly, their enthusiasm is infectious. So if you have some time this weekend, I recommend hopping over to the channel and watching.
Well, the channel's here. You don't have to go anywhere.
This channel.
Yeah, just stay here.
And getting a vibe and seeing what's going on.
Yeah. So anyhow, we're going to go because Third Party Con's starting in a minute. And it starts, actually, I watched the keynotes. The first one, they're all really good. The first one's really good. And then the third one, oh, that's mine, is really good. And like I say, actually, they're all good. The first one's interesting because it goes through the growth of Pathfinder, what's happened the last year. So anyhow, with that, I don't want to bump into the new one. So see everyone. Enjoy the con. Bye.
You'll see me on there.